Channel here over at Subscribestar. So Transformers so woke, and I know the useful idiots on Twitter say that we use that word for everything. It's like, yeah, woke and soy are pretty good summations because they made the G slur and the R slur verboten, so you can't use on mainstream social media anymore. And those were great words that just simply summed up movies. Like all somebody has to say is these things are F and G R, and that sums up, like, where they're coming from. And now, since we can't say those words, like, okay, we just use woke or soy or something like that, and it sums it up the same way. It's like, yeah, and the left hates. They hate both those woke those words, because you look at the left wing kids who are raging against it, and like, yeah, because you are woke and soy. That's why you hate the words, because soy doesn't make you effeminate. And then you look at these guys who are saying this, and they're 300-pound playing video games and just raging for the machine, sucking down the high fructose corn syrup. Anyway, so the Transformers was never like the people who talk tough on the internet. Holy shit, man. That is, it's like the people who talk tough on the internet. You see those people, and you just, it hurts. The cringe to see keyboard warriors is really, really off the charts. Anyway, and the thing is, like, the people who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about, because, like, people don't talk like this in the real world because there's consequences for it. And like, the consequences might not be some macho thing like people pulling out a Liberty device and blowing you away, or something less than that. It's just a look in somebody's face. Like, they look at you, people give you, like, if you said some of the Twitter stuff in IRL, it's not that somebody's going to punch you out like a John Wayne cliche. It's that they're just going to give you a look like, oh, this person's effing R slur. And you like, you say the words aloud, like you're talking about, I don't know, whatever the cultural Marxist Frankfurt School hot words are for the moment. And you see a crowd of people, and they hear you, and they look at you like, oh, this person's drinking the Kool-Aid. That's why they can't say this stuff IRL, but they can get on Twitter and they virtue signal other people who say stuff that they don't really believe. Anyway, the Transformers, yeah, it got woke. I mean, that sums it up pretty well. You can read this guy's interview he does. He sounds like an idiot, and everyone involved with this is probably gonna regret doing it, because this might be, I don't know if it's gonna be the first Transformers that loses money or just like barely breaks even. That it might be that the Transformers was never high art. Like, we get that. It's just CGI explosions meant for an international audience. The language wasn't critical, so if you needed to translate it in foreign languages, it did just fine, because there's not a whole lot of nuance there. It's good robots running around fighting the bad robots and shooting laser beams out of their butthole, and the humans just kind of carry the show along. The plot really wasn't much more than that, and the movies were fine. If you go in expecting Shia LaBeouf or Don Warburg or something, the other guy who was in that, to go team up with the Mechagodzilla equivalents and stop the evil scientists or corporations from getting the MacGuffin microchip, from one place to another place, and stop those evil corporations and the MacGuffin. We gotta stop the thing from getting to the thing. Otherwise, the consequences will be, yeah. I mean, it's kind of basically every type of movie like this kind of thing. And then there are a bunch of stunts and car chases, and you might even have a romantic backstory, but it really didn't have to be anything beyond CGI robots and cars jumping from rooftops or other crazy things. But if I remember correctly, Transformers didn't have a preachy message. I only really remember two of the movies, with the Shia LaBeouf movie, and the other one with the Warburg character, whatever his name was. And there was Megan Fox. It was, some big titted girl who's running around with a green screen behind her that makes it look like she's in a desert, and there's, giant robots in the background. It's like her slow-mo running through those fields. That looks like a pretty effective. That's if he's saying, oh, this is an action movie. The most male audience is going to look at this and go like, yeah, it seems like something I can get behind. But all that has kind of changed. Now it's Transformers so woke. And keep in mind, Transformers had a big Chinese market, because it gave them what they wanted. They liked CGI explosions. The language and translation, any nuance that was lost, is like, well, there was no nuance in the original dialogue, so it doesn't matter. And you got big titted girls and Chinese people, or Chinese settings. It's like, that's what they like. They will accept, like, what sells in China market is going to be Chinese actors, but they will accept fair-skinned actors, but they won't go beyond that. If you remember, you saw the Disney Star Wars poster for Finn was in the foreground for the American version, and then they moved him to the background for the Chinese version and kind of tucked him away in a corner there because in China, they have different preferences. You have to respect cultural differences, which is like something left-wing kids have a hard time doing. They seem to think like their American Western values have to take precedent over like Chinese market for some reason. You put them they put them in this like blue screen of death where they can't really. They do whatever their puppet masters tell them to do. If when it comes time for them to virtue signal against China, they will. But if their puppet masters say don't virtue signal against the Middle East, then they won't. They just won't have the argument. They just avoid it. I mean, like they'll just do whatever they're told to do. Anyway, it was the same for the Wakanda poster. Mask off in America, and it did $1 billion. The Chinese poster had the mask off, and it didn't do as well because Chinese are just not into that kind of stuff. Humans are not fungible. They like different things. So this new Transformers is going to have some woke elements in it. This is from the producer, Bonaventure, I think, who came up with the Nick Cage Superman movie, which never got made, which is probably a good thing. But a movie with Kevin Smith in it about the process of trying to get the movie off the ground was really funny. It's like they spent $10 million to try to get the movie off the ground. And then they just they abandoned it. They realized it's just not worth putting more money into it. And that's kind of interesting to see like how much goes in like the production of getting the movie off the ground, even if it never actually goes forward. You realize like it's a $10 million affair to do nothing. It's like, well, that's just the nature of Hollywood. Anyway, so this new woke version is going to be set in the 90s, and these two Pox characters who have to probably battle against the evil istophobicism of the evil blonde people who are driving around shooting up their neighborhoods, because we all know that the evil blonde people were the most dangerous people in the inner city in the 90s. Or at least that's what Hollywood tells us. It's like the microaggressions from evil blonde store owners when they saw these Pox actors walk in the store. It's like the side-eye glance. That's the real problem in the 90s. Like not the open warfare in Oakland and L.A. and Memphis or St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago. No. It's the blonde store owner who gives a side-eye glance. That microaggression, it's not the 9mm size holes in people, and like in some cities in America, the trauma centers are they get better training literally than battlefields. I think Chicago right now, it's statistically more dangerous to be in Chicago than to be in any war zone on Earth, because there's a deletion on it. It's like anyway, I suspect that's what you're gonna see. Here's the thing with these movies, you got to pay attention to the background characters. And Wonder Woman 1984, that's a 2.5 hour movie. That's a long slog. If you can get through Wonder Woman 1984 again, but this time watch it a little bit more carefully, and watch every fair-skinned blonde character in the background. There's a scene where there's a guy who's holding up a mall for a large-scale Malmassey event, and he's blonde, or fair at least. And then it goes from there. They resolve that, and I think he's holding a child up. He's threatening to delete a child. I think that was the blonde-haired character who's doing that. And then they cut to another scene where there's two blonde characters, man and woman. They leave a store. They have litter in their hands, and they just throw it on the ground. This is in 1984. It's like that was not common. And then they cut to another scene, and it's a blonde guy driving a muscle car recklessly through a city, almost running people over. And then they cut to another scene, and there's a blonde guy who's got a suit and tie, and he's got a bottle of whiskey in his pocket, and he's harassing this woman. And the Pox homeless guy, the poor Pox homeless guy, has to save this evil blonde alcoholic, apparently a businessman who's in a suit and tie in a city with a whiskey bottle. It's like he's just a MacGuffin character. He's just there because Patty Jenkins wanted to put him there. And you start looking through these kind of movies, and I'm saying that this movie is probably going to have those kind of scenes in it where every bad character, even if it's something simple as a 2-second background clip where there's two blonde characters who throw litter on the ground, literally just a flash scene, but every single bad character is projecting all your hatred towards these one group of people. And when you see movies like this, like I can't even see movies like this now because I have Poxwalks, furry, otherkin, BLT, PTSD from Mary Sue Purse Puppies. I just can't see these kind of characters on screen because I know what it's going to be like. And Wonder Woman 84 was probably the worst example or the best example of this passive aggressive, where even the bad guy, like I'm remembering this stuff a couple years later from when the movie came out off the top of my head, where Pedro Pascal or something, they dyed his hair blonde, and like part of that was a Trump throwback, but they dyed his hair blonde to just let you know, like, okay, Trump, blonde man bad because Trump is blonde, but also blonde people in general. Or they wouldn't even let him have his natural hair and have him just be a Latin American businessman. He had to dye his hair blonde. And like have these Trump illusions and blonde people bad illusions. Like that movie is a great example of every little background scene of who the bad people are. I mean, like as I think about the movie, there's more and more scenes that come to mind. And you look at that, it's like this movie's going to be the same way. Like, how do you possibly know that? Because, I mean, it's not just paying attention to Hollywood for the past 5 or 10 years. It's paying attention to Hollywood, I don't know, since about the 70s. Maybe early 80s, they started kicking this stuff off, where it's just more and more of the bad characters. And they did this in comics too. And I mean, it's a kind of another longer video. But thing is, movies are fundamentally different now. Hollywood is just mask off. These are just snake people. Everything is going to be F you and the A, Bolshevik, globalist propaganda. They hate Christians and they hate Europeans. And now they're free to let you know how much they hate you. Like this movie, I can promise you it's going to have this stuff in it. Like I don't know when this thing comes out, but as soon as it's online, I will take a look at it, and you can start pointing out all these background scenes. Like I guarantee there are two Pox characters, and it's set in 1994. So there's probably going to be a scene with a blonde cop is a dick, and then the blonde store owner is a dick, and it's going to be like is some kind of classism. Like he's looking at people are looking at him. I can guarantee you those two scenes are going to be in it. There's going to be some passive aggressiveness with like a blonde businessman or a blonde Karen or a blonde. You get the idea. And you think I'm crazy? It's like start paying attention to all these movies that have been coming out over the past 10 years. You go, wait a minute. Holy shit, every bad character. Once you notice this, you go through and you start rewatching these old movies, you're like, oh my God, this is insane. In Harold and Kumar, the opening scene of the movie, the two most reprehensible characters, I don't know what part of the world we're from, but they're portrayed to be, fair characters, are these two business characters who are just monsters. And in modern American business, it's going to be the reverse, that the two fair characters are not going to be the bosses in the characters. In fact, there's probably only going to be visa holders in these type of businesses. Or I went back and I saw Cabin in the Woods, and you go back and watch Cabin in the Woods. It's a fantastic example of every time there's a chance to portray characters negatively, it's going to be, oh my God, it's like all the bad characters, even if it's in a small way. Like who has a voice of moral authority in Cabin in the Woods? And it's in the office, like the control setting, it's going to be a Pox character. And then in the Cabin in the Woods, it's going to be this Pox character has to be the voice of moral authority. And once you notice this stuff, you're like, this is in every single movie, every single time. I mean, I could obviously go off on this. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys on the next episode.